Hello, Internet, and welcome once again to the always online multiplayer gaming podcast brought to you by mmorpg, your home for all things multiplayer related. I'm your host, Mike Byrne, aka Magic Man, as always. This is episode 507, and of course, we're doing it live, twitch.tv/mmobomb. Every Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern, we've got chat standing by, ready to chime in on our topics today, and hope you could join us live sometime too. But if you're watching on YouTube, listening on Audible, Spotify, whatever, thank you so much. While you're there, give it a like, a subscribe, turn those thumbs ups going, and put in the comments and the reviews and all this stuff to feed the algorithm, particularly your weekly bombs and your question of the week answers. You are an important part of the show. Without you, that portion of the show don't exist. We got a lot of good stuff to talk about today. Joining me to do it, Ms. Quinlan Bowers. What's up, Q?
It's sunny.
It is sunny.
Which is nice.
It's
been raining here so much, so sunny is good.
Yeah, same thing here. Rain the last few days, and it's sunny out there today. Enjoying it. Also on the line, Mr. Troy Blackburn, the noob fridge himself. What's up, boss?
Yeah, I've been outside enjoying this beautiful day, almost 60 degrees. It's a nice break from what we've all been experiencing.
Yep. And we still got a little bit of winter left here, but hopefully it stays mild like it is right now. Like, I think in our area, I don't know about your two. I mean, we're relatively close when it comes to weather patterns, but like we've had one decent snowfall, and it wasn't even all that much. It was like 4 inches of snow or so, and it was only here for a couple of days and it was gone. And other than that, it's been a really mild winter with, a few really, really cold days thrown in.
It's funny though, like how it was for 4 days, but our entire town just shut down.
Yeah, you're a little further south than me, so it's always like that. Not really used to driving in snow communities, right?
We were shocked to find out that our town actually has a snowplow.
Stojan, what's up, friendo? Welcome.
We didn't know that our town has a snowplow. It was
surprising. You're not that far south. Well, I mean, Mississippi.
It's Mississippi, dude.
Yeah, I guess.
Usually when it snows here, it sticks for like a couple of hours and then it goes away.
Right. And then it's just gone. Troy, what's it been like down there? Pretty good.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It was we got snowed in for a few days too. We got about 6 inches here. It was pretty good snow, but like you said, a few days later it was just like in the 50s again. It was all just gone.
How's your weather in your neck of the woods, whether you're in the States or overseas? Let us know. Takal says, when I lived in Minnesota, they shut down the second it snowed a little bit, at least for government employees. It's Minnesota. It snows in the summer.
Downtown's just shut down all the time.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it there. Like, Minnesota gets some beastie snow.
No, when I lived in Fort Wayne, all right, and I've spent most of my time living in the South and the Southwest most of my life, but when I was living in Fort Wayne, I discovered that shockingly, a very large number of people who grew up in Indiana did not know how to drive in snow.
Tori the chicken says, I'm surprised at the amount of snowplows here. They were everywhere almost immediately when it started snowing. And Ninja Panda says, sunshine and showers. Yeah, it's really wild. Like, you're over the pond, but your weather is remarkably similar. I mean, it makes sense, right? We're on the same lateral, but or a very similar lateral to me personally, at least. But still, totally across the ocean, and basically anytime Ninja's got rain, I've got rain. Tazib says just ice. Ice everywhere. Chirac chiming in. Miss Wisconsin winters, everything frozen for months. This freezing one day and 70 the next is murder for my immune system.
It's terrible. It just swapping like that. Like here, it's like sunny one day, rainy the next, and it's just like,
You are not wrong. Well, that's your weather report here from mmobomb.com. I guess let's talk about some video games now. Yeah, my mom in chat there, chiming in Pittsburgh. By the time I would take to write the weather, it would have changed. Yeah, that's pretty much our weather. Yeah, as soon as you start typing what kind of day it is out, it's not that kind of day anymore. It's that fast. Hey, we do have some news to talk about. We're going to talk about some neat news across the spectrum here. One of these games that we're going to talk about in the neat news section coming up actually kind of plays into what I want to talk about first. And then we're going to throw some stats at you, and we'll polish it all off today before we head to the weekly bombs with some early Nightingale thoughts. Because all three of us have partaken of a little bit of Nightingale. Again, very early, just a couple of days into early access. So these will be like unfiltered, very early thoughts. Look for the first look video, the official first look video, to be posted on Tuesday of next week, coming from Troy. Probably could have forced that out today, but then the video footage would have been all the beginning video footage that everybody and their mother was streaming, and we figure you don't want to see that. So we'll wait 2 extra days and give Troy some time to like get into the dungeons and actually have stuff made and shit. Like, hey, it's a survival crafting game, so we're going to go farm rocks for 20 minutes while we talk. No, we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that. So Tuesday next week, look for the full first look, but we'll give you some impressions a little bit later in the show today. So first up, what I want to talk about here is we've been kind of talking about general MMO topics over the last few weeks and getting opinions from people in the question of the week. And we're going to continue that again. I feel like nice to fill that time when there's not like a big news story, like Daybreak shutting down. Well, obviously they're not shutting down. They may have sold PlanetSide too. We're not sure. They wouldn't confirm to us either. So who knows?
Imagine that, them being coy about ownership of something.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Their official word when I reached out to the higher ups there was, Mike, we don't comment on rumors. To which my reply was, I had to ask, right? Like you can't blame me for trying. So we'll see. Maybe they sold PlanetSide too. Maybe they didn't. They sold something. And it was a lesser IP, so it wasn't like they offloaded EQ or anything like that. But we'll see as it all plays out. Anyway, so one of the things we'll talk about in the neat news today is that Gigantic is back. And we'll talk about the particulars of that when we get to the neat news section. But there was a comment on Free to Play Weekly this week about the labeling of that particular game. And somebody took umbrage with it being called a MOBA hero shooter. And I was back and forth just chatting with them. They were super nice. Like, they weren't being a dick or anything like that. Don't get that impression. He was just chatting back and forth with them. I was like, yeah, I get what you're saying. We kind of hate when games throw different labels on and we look at it and we're like, that label doesn't fit. And we've actually emailed companies, not about just games, but about themselves and said, stop using these terms to describe yourself. The most recent one that I am still fighting this battle multiple years later, I constantly pointed out, Digital Extremes, you are not an independent company anymore. Stop it. Stop it. Anyway. So there was some discussion back and forth. So I wanted to talk today about like what makes an MMO for you, and is the genre maybe specifically MMORPG, or you could pull it out to MMOs as a whole. Is it dying? Like, we constantly see that they're dying. MMOs are dying. But if you look at the board, we have more MMOs than we've ever had at any point in history, and that's not even counting the ones that are dead and have gone, right? So let's talk just a little bit about terms. I feel like MMORPG is probably the easiest term still, right? Like, generally, Q, we all kind of understand that an MMORPG, role-playing game elements, mixed with my massively multiplayer online, that's going to be your Worlds of Warcraft, your Final Fantasy 14s, your Elder Scrolls, your Guild Wars 2, your SWTOR, those types of games. And anybody that tries to use that label on something else, remember, Wayfinder initially used that term and then backed away from it, because I feel like out of all of the MMO or genre terms, that one actually has a pretty rigid definition when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, that one is pretty, like, when we see MMORPG, we all pretty much think the only, I think, discrepancies is whether it's on rails or whether it's sandboxy, like that kind of thing, right? But
oh yeah, like the theme park sandbox designation type thing, right?
Right, but otherwise, like, there's a very definite kind of thing to it. For me, I mean, MMO is kind of, it's a little bit ambiguous. It's obviously massively, and then multi-person and online. So you have to have three of those things. But I think part of it comes in is, what do you consider massive?
Right.
Like,
And
for me, like, because a lot of people will be like, well, there's millions of people playing this game. Okay, yeah, there's millions of people playing this game, but for me, how many of them are actually playing together? Right, or at least in the same world, right? You log on to what I think of as an MMO, World of Warcraft, XIV, any of those, and they're playing, you're all together on the same server inhabiting the same world, and it's not necessarily the same when you have, like, the MMO shooters or something like that, because it's broken up a little bit more. It's smaller groups, because it's honestly, I think for shooters, a lot of the technical stuff, it's easier to break it up into smaller groups too, right?
yeah.
But you may have your, like, I don't think of, say, Path of Exile as being an MMO specifically, because when I'm playing Path of Exile, other than when I go to the hubs, I'm generally just out here in the world by myself, not seeing
Yeah, or
anybody else.
co-oping with a few people.
Right. I'm not going to run across somebody and accidentally or on purpose, whatever, steal their mob. I'm not going to get into fights with somebody over gathering nodes, or, whatever. And it's, so I think that for me is a lot of the, is part of the difference. I don't think of Path of Exile as MMO. It's obviously multiplayer, and people can gather in large groups in specific areas, but most of the time you're out there killing things by yourself. Or,
Yeah,
like,
and
you're out
obviously
there doing your thing.
there's other terms that start applying, right? Like Troy, we could have I'm gonna ask the question, like, is Fortnite an MMO? Under the strictest, or maybe the loosest definition of MMO, is it massively multiplayer and online? I don't think you can disagree that, yeah, conceptually that meets the standard, but does it count as an MMO? And typically you wouldn't refer to, to Fortnite or something like that as an MMO. You would say it's a battle royale, right? Like, there are other terms for some of these games, but, like, to Q's point, League of Legends, thousands and thousands of people online at any given time, 10 in a match, right? And yeah, again, that's another one where we would probably refer to it as a MOBA before we would say it's an MMO. But when you speak about MMOs as a whole, you're talking about, are MMOs doing well? Are they dying? Are they making money? Are they, just shitty these days, or whatever? Do these other games fall into that bucket of that discussion, or do you let those secondary terms, battle royale, MOBA, third-person tactical shooter, those things, separate those out?
Usually I like to separate them out through other terms. For me, I grew up in an age where MMO was just short for MMORPG, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because I think a
Yeah,
lot of
like,
people get mad when you use the term MMO referring to, something like a Path of Exile, and they're like, that is not an MMORPG, and then you're like, well, I didn't say MMORPG, I said MMO.
yeah, and unfortunately the phrase has sort of evolved over the years since I've been doing this, to sort of incorporate a lot of other things, and just the short phrase MMO isn't just an abbreviation anymore. Lots of companies are using it. Lots of players use it to describe their games. At the end of the day, MMO, I still think, like you said, it's about how many people are instanced with you, how many people you're actually seeing and playing with at a time. And a lot of the games who tag themselves as MMO, yeah, you've got a lot of people playing online. Fortnite has a lot of people online playing their game. League of Legends has a lot of people online playing their game. But I'm only interacting with, a couple dozen at a time. So is it an MMO to me? No, to me it's not. To me, those are battle royales and MOBAs, which is just a multiplayer online battle arena. So yeah, the phrases, they kind of break down for me, But like I said, I started this in a different age where that was just short for MMORPG, and that's all it meant.
Is that still where you're at? Takal in chat is saying that, that's exactly what it is in his brain. People keep trying to be cute. MMO means MMORPG. People need to stop playing. Like, is that still where it is for you? When I say, hey, Troy, you got to check out this MMO, are you automatically in your mind still envisioning that I'm about to recommend an Elder Scrolls or a Guild Wars 2 to you?
Yes, that's the way my brain still functions with the word. In my writings on the site, I've used it as buzzwords when other companies use it for themselves, but it still feels funny a lot of times. And to me, MMO still just means MMORPG.
Q, are you kind of in that same boat? I mean, we're all from the same era here.
Yeah, when I think MMO, I think MMORPG. I understand the technical, it's multiplayer, it's online,
Right.
MMO, right? And like you mentioned Fortnite. So most of the time, Fortnite, it's just you and,
99 other fools.
right? But then there are the occasions like with the their creative space stuff, right? Like the concerts and stuff they have, where there is an ungodly amount of people just gathered together for that, but they're not really doing anything else, right?
Yeah, it's like watching the concerts and stuff.
They just go into the space and watch the concert and hang out, but you're not doing any questing, you're not doing, any, like, literally that's all you're doing. So obviously they created a space where a whole bunch of people could gather, but that's a side thing. That's not the point of the game or anything like that. So
Tori the chicken. Trackmania is fairly large and it's multiplayer, but if you told me to play this MMO, let me call a doctor for you.
Right.
Always got to throw in that Trackmania reference.
Always. Tori always has
thing.
to get Trackmania in the show.
It is a thing, and I complain about it a lot when I'm writing stuff. Like, we'll get press releases that have, and it'll be like this ungodly list of game variants, right? It'll be like the action MOBA, like all of the, and you're just sitting here going, how is that even possible? Like, you're trying to do too much. You're trying to do way too much. You're trying to appeal to way too many people. Pick what your game is and make that your game. Don't try to squish 7 game variants together and be like, this is a game.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of where the discussion on the Free-to-Play Weekly comments went between someone and myself, because when you look at a game like Gigantic, referring to itself, Troy, as a MOBA hero shooter, it's not wrong. Right? Under the strictest
that's the
definition,
thing. Gigantic's not wrong.
Gigantic is a hero shooter in the fact that you are picking from a predefined list of characters, and it's a shooting game. It's not wrong that it's using the term MOBA, because it is a MOBA-style gameplay, lanes, capturing things, that type of stuff.
Yeah, it is a lane pusher, capture the objectives.
Right, so it's not wrong, but you could also understand, somebody maybe like the commenter saying, that's not right, because technically those two terms are describing very different things, right? One is the MOBA term is describing the gameplay. Our game plays like a MOBA. Instantly, if you've ever played a MOBA, you now have a basic concept of how I'm describing this new game would play. It plays like a MOBA. Oh, okay, there's lanes, I'm going to be pushing, maybe some jungling type stuff, all that good stuff. But then hero shooter kind of refers to mechanics and character selection, not necessarily the gameplay. So, we refer to Overwatch as a hero shooter. And then in there, it describes both, right? You're picking a hero, it is a shooter, and it kind of falls into that same. So if you were being like this person and saying these terms define gameplay, then I could understand how you'd say, you're either a MOBA or a hero shooter. A hero shooter to them clearly meant, 5-on-5 death matches, capture the points, capture the flag, those types of, it's a shooter game, payload and stuff like that. Where MOBA defined the gameplay, and therefore Gigantic is a MOBA, not a hero shooter.
Mm.
I don't know if I agree or disagree. Like it's one of those weird positions where I'm like, even if I think you're wrong, you're right. Like,
if you were to ask me to break something like gigantic down into like one keyword, I would probably use the keyword MOBA due to the gameplay elements of the game. Do they have hero shooter elements? Yeah, they absolutely do, with the way that their characters work and the way like you said, the mechanics of the game work. But gameplay wise, at the end of the day, at its core, I would describe it as MOBA.
Yeah. I think I would too. Like I agreed with this person, but I also said this isn't the hill to die on, right? Like there are much more important hills to die on than gigantic billing itself as a MOBA hero shooter. But I also did point out to them, we behind the scenes we do comment to these people like, you stop. We were one Wayfinder when they said MMO. We were like, no, you're not. No.
No.
You're a co-op dungeon crawler with a couple open shared world areas. That you are not an MMO. You are not an MMO. Yeah, see, Tori in chat saying hero shooter to them means payload, capture the point, and so on. That's the most important point. The characters are secondary. So I can see why Gigantic was using it. We're a shooter where you got to select one of these heroes. But generally speaking, these terms usually refer to the gameplay, which is why I hate when I see like MMO, are MMOs dead YouTube videos. I'm like, wow, that's a really broad, no. Like the answer is no. If you're just talking about massively multiplayer online games, no. Now, to Troy's point, if you're using the term interchangeably in your head, MMO for MMORPG, now that makes a little more sense to have as the discussion, right? Because you're being very specific about.
I mean, does it really? Because there are MMOs that are dead, but there are plenty that are just fine. It's literally just another talking point so that you have somebody to, it's clickbait. That's
well, yeah, I mean, there's always an element of clickbait, and I'm sure,
an element.
Right, there definitely is an element of clickbait there with those types of things. And like, I'm going to try and name this episode on YouTube in a way that doesn't do the same exact fucking thing, right? Just because it does annoy me, but it is actually legitimately what we're talking about here. So let's narrow this down then. Let's just stick to the MMO. I think massively multiplayer online games are not going anywhere anytime soon. There's actually too many of them. So no, they are not dying. But let's look at MMORPGs, right? That is a topic that you hear all the time, that genre specifically, Troy, is dying. Is that the case, though? If you look back, like the golden age, right? World of Warcraft in its Wrath of the Lich King days, then you start having Ion and Rift and some other titles coming. Guild Wars is doing its thing, although the original Guild Wars wasn't exactly an MMORPG. It was a group-based thing anyway, so maybe you set that one aside. Final Fantasy XI. And then we start seeing Lord of the Rings Online and Neverwinter and these other games. When you compare 10 or 15 years ago to now in the MMORPG space, is that genre dying?
No, I don't think it's dying at all. I think we're probably right on the cusp of a small little renaissance of MMORPGs. I think we've got several, especially with the Unreal Engine games coming out, the Unreal Engine 5 games. I think those are going to be interesting to see where those go. Do those, how many of those actually pan out? Because not all of them are going to make it. It's the same thing, it always has been. There's going to be 4 or 5 launch and 2 or 3 will find success and maintain themselves going forward. But I think the problem we got, there's only so many MMORPG players out there, and we've got more games than we've ever had in the genre. And I think you're just seeing the smaller populations and more games. I think people aren't seeing the 10, 15 million people in World of Warcraft anymore because there are so many other games that players have spread out to nowadays that, from the outside looking in, you don't have that one game that has the 15 million players or whatever it is World of Warcraft had back in the day, but you've probably got more players overall playing in several different games, and you've got games that they don't get the limelight that they deserve most of the time, even from us, but that are doing well out there, that are at least financially making money for the company and putting out content. and still maintaining their game going forward. So is the genre as a whole dying? No, you're always going to have individual games coming and going. But the genre of the whole, I think, is fairly stable at the moment and has an opportunity to become really healthy again in the next 4 to 5 years.
Doesn't what you just described, though, actually mean it is dying, right? Like, if you have a capped player base for MMORPGs, let's say it's 25 million people, right, play MMORPGs as a whole. No matter what game, there's 25 million active MMORPG players. And that number really doesn't go up, really doesn't go down anymore, right? There's not a lot of people coming, not a lot of people going. If you play them, you like them. And if you haven't played them yet, you're just not into them, right? Maybe down the road, an IP catches you and pulls you into MMOs. Great. But there were probably 2 people that left MMOs, just aged out. They had no time for it anymore, whatever. Monetization just totally ruins the genre for them. Let's assume that what you just said is true and that the player cap is installed, right? 25 million. As more of these smaller games come out, that 25 million, to your point, gets fractured even more. Anytime a new game comes out, people leave a game to go play it. Maybe it's trash and they leave and come back, but those 25 million people keep spreading out over more and more titles. Then some of those titles start closing down, which we see, and some of those 25 million people just don't bother coming back to a different MMO at that point. Doesn't it inherently mean that it's, if not dying, it's as good as it's going to get? Like, you're not going to all of a sudden have an influx of growth in MMORPG player base?
I think we are about to have an influx of growth in MMO player base, and I think it's because more games are coming to console now, and that potential audience over there hasn't really had a chance to tap into the MMORPG market. A lot of players over there don't know that they're MMORPG players yet. So yeah, I don't subscribe to if you're not growing, you're dying. I know all companies do, but at the end of the day, the quality games always rise to the top, and the players always seem to migrate in that direction. And you've got the bad games that always die.
Q, where do you fall on this?
I agree with Troy in that I don't think that they're done. Now, what you were talking about, you're playing a game, like, okay, the player base is installed, as you put it. Although I think he's right. When you add more platforms for people that, only play on consoles or whatever, there's a pretty good chance that they're going to try these games. Whether or not they stick with them is something else, but there's going to be an influx of a certain amount of people. But to your point of, like, new games come out, you go and try them, whatever, right? So in my experience, what generally happens is every MMO player has a game that they play. Unless something terrible happens, that is the game that you play, right? Other games come out, you're still going to go try them, and you might add other MMOs to your list of games, but they're not necessarily the game.
Right.
Right. So there's always the one that you're financially supporting in some way, for sure. There's the ones that you're going and trying that may be added to your list as, like, I have downtime in this game, so I'll go play this game, right? Because of the patch cycles and everything else. Like, right now, if I wasn't busy doing additional busy work in XIV, I could go play another MMO if I felt like it, right? Although, then there's also single player games that we hop into as well. But I just don't think that it's a case of, oh, new game came out and I'm just going to go over there and this is where I live now. Like, because if you've been in an MMO for a while, like I said, unless something just really bad happens, then you've got your friends, you've got your guild or whatever. And you're attached to your character, because that is a trait of MMORPG players. You get attached to your character. You don't want to, like, abandon it if you've been playing for a really long time. So I just feel like there's not really a concern for established games, like really established games that continue to have a decent player base, that when new games come out, Like, in fact, they encourage us, right? There are devs that are like, no, don't spend all your time in here and burn yourself out doing this. Go play something else when you want to,
Yeah,
right?
Yoshi P famously.
Right. So it's not, I don't think MMORPGs, I think it's more like there's just kind of a status quo. Like some games are going to be terrible. They're just not going to click for some reason. And it's going to be a bunch of them because there's a bunch of people trying to hop on the train. And the same is true for other game types like MOBAs, right? You have your established MOBAs that these are what people play, right? League of Legends, Smite, whatever. You have the established ones, and then every so often other MOBAs will roll out, and the people who play those will go over and try it out and see how it plays. And if it's good, they add it to the rotation, and if it's not good, the game dies. And most of the time it's not good. So
Yeah, well, I mean, we've also seen good ones caught up in that, right? There was that whole
Yeah.
push, what, like 5-6 years ago, where like everybody freaking was releasing a MOBA and
and that's a big problem. It's better when it's kind of more spread out
spaced out.
across
Yeah, and
genres.
then we shifted to
Yeah.
battle royales, right? And then like 2 years ago, it was card games. Like everybody, well, it was a little earlier than 2 years, a little later than 2 years. I mean, but Dawngate still brings a tear to Troy's eye every time you mention
Yes.
it. Just a little tear right down the old cheek
Because it
there.
was a good one that got lost in the mass production of MOBAs.
Right, and well, there's only so many games that a single person can play. So you just like you can't.
Troy just laughed. He was like, "Challenge accepted."
I have 4 monitors. Watch me.
But I mean, there's only so much you can play. There's only so much you can afford. So when it comes to, like I said, if you have an established game that you've been playing, you're going to keep it because you like that game, unless something really bad happens and the devs just fail in some massive way. But these other games, you might pick up one or two as like an alternate thing. But I really just think the best thing that devs can do at this point is instead of being like, "Ooh, MOBAs are the hot thing. Let's everybody make a MOBA." Just realize that there's more than just one kind of player out there, and not everybody is hopping onto the MOBA train. Not everybody's hopping onto the ARPG train. Not everybody's hopping onto whatever. And you can make different games and attract other people.
Let us know what
That being
you
said, I need
Oh,
a 2 terabyte hard drive real bad.
Let us know what you think in the comments below. Do these terms bother you? Is MMO just interchangeable for MMORPG, or does it just describe this big nebulous space at this point? Does it bother you when games use multiple terms like gigantic is? And are these different genres dying? Which ones are doing well? Which ones aren't? That's going to be the question of the week later in the show. So get your pens and pencils ready to write in on the YouTube comment. Don't use pens or pencils on your monitor. Just go ahead and type your comments. Don't forget your weekly bombs. D bomb for something good, A bomb for something bad in the comments below. Now let's talk a little bit of neat news, and we'll start with one we've kind of been mentioning as we go here, and that's Gigantic. It's back. It's coming back for like what, the 4th time, something like that. Like Gigantic.
At least the 3rd time.
Yeah. This game will not go away. However, there are going to be changes now this time. So this is going to be brought back by Abstraction Games. That's the company that's doing the development. Gearbox is obviously the one that sent out a bunch of the trailers and stuff. They're bringing this back in Gigantic Rampage Edition, which will be a buy-to-play game, $20. You can sign up for closed beta, although the closed beta's only got like hours left, I think, from what I saw this morning. So maybe you're too late to sign up. Fans of the original game will be happy to know you are getting everything you were familiar with. You're getting all 23 heroes, the original maps and game modes, but then you're going to be getting some extra stuff. The launch will include 2 new heroes and 2 new maps, and then they're going to be making some ranked mode improvements and skins and stuff like that post-launch. But this is a $20 price tag, and then everything is earnable in-game. They're billing it as a premium and definitive release of the original 5v5 MOBA hero shooter. I don't know, Troy. Like, as interesting as Gigantic always was, it never caught on to the extent that it needed to for whoever was holding the license at the time. Whether that was like Motiga back in the day, and then they got bought and were getting help, and then they had to do things themselves, and back and forth, back and forth. Here it comes again. Obviously, being a MOBA, there is going to be server architecture here that needs to be maintained. That don't come cheap. So getting $20 up front for everybody that plays might seem very nice, but they're going to have to make this sustainable after that initial rush of players. Is a game like Gigantic good enough to succeed in that type of model?
I think the game itself was quality. For me, the art style was really hard on my eyes. I had a really hard time distinguishing foreground from background, character from background, things like that, but just due to the art style and all the oversaturation of everything. But the game itself is quality. It is a quality game that presents, unique gameplay, unique characters that are fun to play and interact with. At the end of the day, I just didn't play it because visually it just wasn't for me. I struggled with it a little bit. Is it going to be able to maintain itself? They're saying right now, when you buy this base game, there's no microtransactions in that, but there's going to have to be some form of microtransactions at some point, because like you said, this infrastructure isn't going to just support itself and maintain itself. There has to be some kind of income, some kind of constant income going forward. What that's going to be, I'm assuming they'll sell heroes as and call them DLCs instead of microtransactions or something like that. But yeah, there's got to be something going forward. And are you going to have a player base willing to commit that $20 buy-in and commit to purchases after that?
Q, what do you think? It's coming out in April. $20. I mean, that's not a big ask. If you liked this back and you've opined or been pining for it for a while, it's coming back, and $20 gets you in. Boom, bang, done.
Yeah, I would say, I don't think $20 is a big entry if this is something that you're interested in. I mean, obviously, there are much worse prices on games. But I do think, like Troy said... I do think, like Troy
Which
said,
has an 8-hour free trial now, by the way.
The issue is the supporting infrastructure. And so they're going to have to find some way to continue, because obviously the people that are going to buy the game will buy the game, and then that's it. That's the money they have. So they're going to have to come up with something else. And I don't know if it would be like, character DLC, or if they just, I don't know, come up with little expansions or something, like how it is that they decide to charge people, but they're going to have to charge people in order to continue to keep the game online.
Yeah, right? And it's going to be available on a ton of platforms. So I'm not doubting that their day one income is going to be pretty decent. It's what's that day 365 income looking like in relationship to the cost to keep an always online game like a MOBA on at all time, and servers and matchmaking and all that fun stuff. I wish them luck. I definitely do. I felt like it got a bum rap and had some unfortunate shit happen to it back in the day, multiple times. But I don't know if selling it as we've kind of seen that with other games before. And I just wonder, is this going to be Gigantic's coming back, $20, 6 months from now? Hey, that Gigantic that's back is going free to play and is getting a cash shop. And then all of a sudden we're back at our original Gigantic again. And it's kind of like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know.
I do think they're launching at a better time this time around. Last time they were in the middle of sort of the MOBA hero shooter sort of renaissance, and you had Battleborn and Overwatch and Paladins, and everybody and their mama was producing one. Now you've got, Overwatch fans who aren't overly happy. I don't know that they're necessarily going to one-for-one translate over to Gigantic, but I think it would be something that they'd be interested in checking out.
Yeah, maybe, but you are, again, back to our terms discussion, you're talking about two wildly different games when it comes down to the gameplay. It may be a third-person shooter, but the gameplay is MOBA versus payload, deathmatch, capture the flag, that type of stuff. Tazeb saying, I wish the devs all the best, but having 0 of the original devs kind of kills this for me. And no, having some of the original devs consulting just isn't good enough. Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning DLC proved that, at least for me. Currently 45% positive on Steam. Just my opinion, though. Sorry for being a downer. Yeah, so I don't really have a problem there, only because, at least for now, right, they're just taking what was already there. And they finished up some of the stuff that the OG devs did, these new heroes, these couple of new maps. Those were already in the works, and they just finished them up. And then everything they've told us so far is just like system features, ranked play, stuff like that. So I'm going to hold Tazeb on sharing that opinion until I see like the first couple of things they try to do that are totally new. Totally new hero, totally new map, new modes, that type of stuff first, before I just toss it out because there's no OGs involved directly in it. So maybe just hold a little bit. Killer Clowns from Outer Space, the game, finally announced a damn release date. Finally. Been following this one for way too long. Way too long. If you like the asymmetric horror games, Friday the 13th, rest in peace. Your Ghostbusters, your, of course, Dead by Daylight, your stuff like that. Killer Clowns from Outer Space is going to release on June 4th, 2024, on PC, Xbox Series S and X, and the PlayStation 5. Pre-orders for the game are now live. If you like, this is another genre that we've seen a lot of this year and in the last 2 years, Troy, right? Like, we had Friday the 13th, which was very well received and was a lot of fun, but unfortunately, just timing-wise, ended up getting murked because it got caught up in the whole lawsuit over the movie rights of the characters, and so the game just kind of, went stagnant while it waited for that and just was never able to recover. But now we've got Dead by Daylight doing its thing. We've got other games in this genre, Ghostbusters, Spirits Unleashed. We have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which just recently came out. And now Killer Clowns from Outer Space, kind of in that same vein as Texas Chainsaw, right? Kind of capitalizing on iconic 80s horror. This one could have a little more fun, right, than you can with something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm a huge horror movie buff, so I've been all over this one, but I've also been all over the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And, when's the last time I played it? I don't know. That's kind of, maybe a little worrying for Killer Clowns. Definitely one I'm looking forward to, though. But, Evil Dead was another one that just recently came out in this same game space, right? And that one's not doing all that well. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the same devs as Friday the 13th. Well, one of the companies involved in the overall product is one of the companies involved on Friday the 13th. When you flip over to the Killer Clowns side, by the way, there is also a Friday the 13th head in charge. Randy Greenback was on Friday the 13th and is now, a leader on this particular project as well. Can I interest you in coming with me? We both loved Evil Dead, but kind of to our point, neither one of us really plays it anymore.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think this is going to be a genre that's probably a little overloaded at the moment. You'll probably get some day one interest and some folks checking it out that play that type of game. And then I got a feeling they're going to migrate back to the game that they came from, which is probably Dead by Daylight for most people.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? You got a big dog in this camp in Dead by Daylight queue. Like, that is, and they have no problem going out and getting partnerships with iconic horror characters, right? They're spending the money to do that. So it's not even like, oh, cool, they made a Texas Chainsaw Massacre game and I can actually be Leatherface because, you can go be Freddy Krueger in Dead by Daylight. Like, they have no problem scooping those licenses when they need to. And that's a big dog to overcome.
They just announced an Iron Maiden crossover.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we wrote that yesterday. Yeah.
The Fortnite of horror games. They'll just cross over with anything.
although it's funny with Fortnite, they do try to skew at least a little bit younger.
True.
Whereas I was like looking at Daylight by Daylight, and I'm like, I'm not. I don't feel like their audience in it for this is the kids.
What age
Like,
group is playing this game?
like I feel like they're skewing a little older for that, which is great because obviously a lot of us that grew up playing games, right? Like it's the stretch of age groups is much wider than it used to be. Like
Yeah.
when we were kids, there were not really adults playing. Like they might play with their kids, but then they just sit there and look at you like you were stupid for wanting to play video games in the first place.
Yeah, video game companies. Everybody's always worried about that 18 to 24 demo. I got news for you. I got way more money at 45 than I did when I was 18 to 24.
Exactly.
This one is weird on that front for me, though. Like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there's been some remakes and some stuff like that. Like, there was one Killer Clowns movie.
Yeah.
Like, and it was in the 80s. Like,
I mean, that's
that
what
was
I'm
it.
saying. Like, I feel like these games are aiming for a very specific age demographic, and then they're just kind of crowding the space at the same time. Like, that's probably not the best decision.
Yeah, I think you
Like,
could have
and
some fun with it just because of the premise and some of the weapons, and they can get goofy with it, where maybe you can't do that in a Dead by Daylight or a Texas Chainsaw Massacre because you're going for a little more realism, chainsaws, guns, that type of thing, where you can get like the cotton candy guns and get goofy in this. But yeah, like when you look at this IP, my kids would only know this IP because of how much of a horror buff I am. Like, that's the only reason they even know what this is. And none of them know that there's a game coming out. None of them. Speaking of terms, by the way, here's a fun little news bit on some terms. There's a new MMOBA coming out. A new MMOBA. Sounds like you're stuttering when you say it, right? Like, it's a new MMOBA. MMOBA. Project Gundalf, Gundalf, coming from Cult of the North. Now, we don't have a lot on this one at all, but we do know that it's an Unreal Engine 5, and they're describing it as, excuse me, a massive next-generation MMOBA, MMOBA, PvP game, which is going to pit players against each other, building kingdoms and battling gods and all kinds of stuff like that. Go ahead, Q.
doesn't saying a massive next generation kind of negate the need for the additional M at the beginning of MOBA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this is a massive multiplayer online battle arena. Not to be
Right,
confused with Dota, which is that's just a MOBA. Why would you play a MOBA when you can play a MMOBA?
It's like quadruple A games. We're just adding letters to crap now to make it sound better than what it is.
It's the first quadruple A game to have at best mediocre rate reviews. and most of the reviews are subpar. I didn't even know
quadruple A games were a thing until they said that.
Yeah.
And I've been playing games for a long time. I don't think I've ever heard of a quadruple A game before.
I know, Troy, you're kind of going to be watching this one, but it is super like vague and nebulous at the moment.
Yeah, it's one that you use the term MOBA, and I'll keep an eye on it. What it's going to be when it comes out, obviously, who knows at this point. Some of the things they talked about with kingdom building and taking on opponents, like that almost sounds like mobily to me. Like, so I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see till more information comes out. It's hard to judge at this point.
Chirac says that's like saying Fortnite is an extra large arena shooter. Hey, SWTOR patch 7.4.1 coming soon here. Troy, you're going to have to take me through this. What the hell is this whole date night thing? Like, as far as I knew, you could already like gain and lose favor with your companions. So now I can romance them? Is that what's going on here? What are we doing?
Yeah, I guess you can take your romance companions out on a date and influence your relationship with them now. It's I think it's a little reminiscent of some of the early days of SWTOR during during some of the original class missions. You actually had like one-on-one time with your companions, and you would actually talk to them and really garner influence and have actual conversations with them, where you had different choices to make as far as where your side of the conversation was coming from. So I think this is sort of a throwback to that with some of the new companions, a way to sort of incorporate that back into the game without having to include it in the main storyline now the way that they used to.
Do we know what like the end objective here is? Like, are you just trying to get laid, or do you get buffs? Like, what happens here? Do we know?
I haven't heard anything in particular as far as like, are there rewards for this, or how much favor are you gaining with these companions? Because companions do level up as you gain favor with them, and they do become better stat wise if you're actually utilizing them to run around with you in the game. But as far as if you're not actively using them, it doesn't really affect a whole lot.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd be down with that. I don't really care about romance in like my MMOs and like Baldur's
I
Gate.
really
like,
don't. I really
didn't
don't
care.
either.
Yeah, that's just not me. I'm not. I know that's like some people queue like that is their. Can you romance companions? Okay, cool. I'm playing. It's like, really? I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, Baldur's Gate is like the Tumblr game.
Yeah. Got to make up for not having it in Anthem.
in the main game, like you could romance and get married, right, to some of your companions, and then one of the expansions came out and they all just kind of disappeared, and you came back and you had this like one little reunion scene where maybe they acknowledged, and then it's kind of like you're not married anymore, they're just another companion out there. So is all this going to be for naught when the next next expansion
It's called a divorce, Troy.
I don't know. I didn't agree to that.
The first date night missions, by the way, are going to be Lana Beniko, Theron Shawn, Koth, Vortina, and Archon. So those are the 4 that you'll be able to, I don't know, go out on a date with. Sure. Speaking of Star Wars, just this finishing up the neat news here. I love this. Star Wars Battlefront, the good ones.
Yeah.
To be clear, the good ones. Star Wars Battlefront from 2004 and Battlefront 2 from 2005 are being released in a classic collection. This was actually shown off at the Nintendo Partner Direct. But it's not just on Switch. It's on multi platforms. And Steam users, yes, you will be able to use it on Steam Deck as well. It's going to launch on March 14th for $35.01. I believe, don't quote me on this, but I think Matthew was poking around and found out that if you own the originals on Steam, you might get a little bit of a discount on this one. Don't quote me on that, but if you've already poked around on Steam and that's true or not, go ahead and throw it in there. It's going to support up to 64 players online, lots of bonus content, Jabba's Palace map for Battlefront, Cloud City, and stuff like that for Battlefront 2, heroes, villains. This is fantastic. I absolutely love this. Absolutely love that this is coming back. If you never played them, you got to play them. You got to play them. Particularly if you were expecting the latest Battlefront to be good and you missed out on your sense of pride and accomplishment.
Yeah. Battlefront 2 was one of my favorites on the PS2, I believe it was.
Yeah, so let's finish up here with just a few stats and then some Nightingale opinions, and we'll finish it up with the bombs here. So in the interesting stats category this week, we've got news from Sony and from Epic Games. The interesting stat for Sony is, that's not good. Sony lost about $10 billion of its market value when they released their latest earnings report. Why? Predominantly because the PlayStation 5 just is not selling as they forecasted. They estimated that they were going to have about 25 million units sold. They sold around 21 million by the end of March. And that 4 million and some other stuff that was released in their report. It wasn't exclusively the PlayStation 5 sales, but a big part of it caused their stock price to tank a little over 8%, and they lost $10 billion in market value. They also, over at Sony, Troy, they're a little bit concerned with Bungie's management and maybe watching things a little closer. We've talked about this when it happened initially, when there were some layoffs at Bungie, but now we're getting word from Sony execs in interviews that we think that there's some management and some budgeting stuff that they could really benefit from. It was a nice way of saying, I'm watching you. I've got my eyes on you, buddy.
Yeah.
Got my eyes.
And I don't
on you,
think they're wrong. I think there is some management issues at Bungie and some budgeting issues at Bungie, obviously, with the struggles they've been going through and getting this expansion out and needing it to do what they need it to do. So, if I was Sony, I'd be keeping an eye on them too.
Q, on the flip side, maybe some good news here. Epic Games put up its year in review, as they do, and they have given away over 500, what is it? Over 500 million free games last year. And they have over 270 million gamers that have used the platform on PC. Now, that's all well and good. Those are impressive numbers, lots of people, lots of free games. That's great. Then when you start digging into the numbers, there's kind of questions. Questions like, is this making money? Because the total value redeemed free games based on U.S. prices is a little over $2,000. Over 586 million games claimed. They had 86 different titles. There was 950 million spent by PC players on the Epic Games Store. That is an increase of 16%. 310 million spent by players on third-party PC games in the Epic Games Store. That's actually down 13%. And then when you start getting into the real nitty-gritty, the average spend per user, the numbers maybe aren't so great. It's kind of hard to tell because Steam doesn't release these numbers, so we can't oh, look, compare them.
Yeah, I can't compare them.
Yeah, but I mean,
which would be telling, I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah.
Steam doesn't release these numbers because Steam doesn't have a point to prove. That they've been doing what they've been doing for a very long time. They're
Gabe is too busy chilling on his personal island to worry about telling you how much money he makes.
And that's the thing, part of because the Epic Game Store came out, and part of it was oh look, we're doing all this stuff different than Steam, right? So there's been this thing with the Epic Game Store since forever of their competition with the other platforms. So therefore they're rolling this information out because that's been their primary selling point, how they compete with the other platforms. And the free games and all. I mean, when it first started, I went and downloaded free games, right? But then I realized I never actually log in to play games on their platform because I log into Steam.
Yep.
So yeah, the biggest moneymaker for them is Fortnite, and all the people that are playing on there are there, were probably there initially because of Fortnite.
I have purchased games on Steam just to realize later that I owned them for free on Epic.
Yeah, I don't even know what games I own on Epic anymore, or GOG, any of the I don't know what games I own on those. I just and the thing is with GeForce Now, you can connect all of those to GeForce Now and play through them, and the only one that I've bothered to connect is Steam. So I don't know how much profit they're actually making, but I do know that I know people that started out downloading the free games and then just quit even bothering with it because
I grab them every Thursday, but I'm an exception to the three of us because I have to go into it to play Rocket League because I did not buy Rocket League when it was on Steam. I only started playing Rocket League when it went free to play, and we only covered free to play at the time. So I was going in and going to prep for the first look. Zach ended up doing the first look because he was much better than me at the time. And so, yeah, now I'm addicted to Rocket League, but I go claim them every Thursday, but that's only because I happen to be in there anyway. But
exactly.
Zach still has the best description for the Epic Game Store. It's where you go to visit your games in prison. You just put your hand against the glass and say hello to some of your games.
I've abandoned my games in prison. Like they're there, and I don't even know their names anymore.
I'm gonna keep my Nightingale opinions really short. I was always very interested in trying Nightingale, but I knew Nightingale was not going to be a game for me simply because I'm just generally not into those full blown survival crafting things. So long term, I knew Nightingale wasn't going to be for me. I am messing around in it. Yes, it's got some interesting things. I don't know, though, if I'm going to be playing it even long enough to get to some of the more interesting things that Troy might be showing off in the first look, because I just know this game isn't for me. So, thumbs up, and I will give them credit. They immediately responded. We posted the story yesterday. They've prioritized an offline mode because they have heard the server issues and this isn't exactly what people wanted as far as the multiplayer stuff going on. So they are prioritizing an offline mode, which I think is fantastic, and a quick turnaround in, hey, we hear you. It's going to take a little time to get it there, but I like what Inflexion's doing. I just don't think long-term the game's going to be for me, but I knew that already. Troy, this is right in your wheelhouse, though.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to get past the initial going and picking up rocks and picking up limbs, and I've got my first little room of a house built, and I'm really looking forward to diving into the portals and collecting the cards and exploring the different worlds and things like that. So, but I'm ready to get past the typical survival sandbox stuff and get into some of the more unique stuff and some of the more genre bending stuff that was what attracted me to the game in the first place. But you got to get through that first part. You got to have that busy work, so we got to get through that to get to the good stuff.
Q, where are you thinking?
I mean, I've been playing it. I actually had the server issue yesterday, and I was doing like a mission or whatever where I needed to go down into this thing, and it kicked me. The server kicked me out and kicked me all the way back to my house. Which is on the other side of the map. So that was a little infuriating, but I've got my house built. I've got my my recruit that you get, and do you remember the old Sherlock games where Watson would just kind of jump scare you, right?
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
traveling with you, but not. He would yeah, so that is Ollie. Ollie, I'll be in somewhere where I'm fighting, and Ollie will just appear right in front of me, and I'm like, oh shit, that's and think it's one of the things I'm trying to fight, and no, it's just Ollie. The good thing is Ollie does help you fight. So there's that, but it's just you'll be running around something and they're right there. Which is a little weird, and I wish they would fix that.
Look for the first look video next Tuesday from Troy after he gets a little progress this weekend to show you some of the later stuff. Let's head over and do the weekly bombs. I don't know if I've ever done this before. I may have done it once, but I'm going to give the same bomb this week that I gave last week. The bomb to Islands of Insight. I'm still enjoying it. It's so chill. It's just so fucking chill. I love it. Dub bomb. Go ahead, Troy.
I'm giving a dub bomb to the Moria expansion for Lords of the Ring Online. Lord of the Rings
finally
Online,
made
Lords
it.
of the Ring. Yep, I'm finally in Moria. I'm almost done with Moria now. I'm level 59. I think I'm on the last book that's actually in the mines, and then I go out to Lothlorien after that when I finish that up. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think I was reading a little bit of not really spoilers, but kind of a look ahead of where I needed to go next, and you catch back up to the Fellowship a little bit in Lothlorien and run into some of them and talk to Galadriel and all that. So looking forward to that.
Just a spoiler for you: the ring gets destroyed. Q, go ahead.
I'm actually gonna give the bomb to Inflexion for deciding they are going to go ahead and do the single or to do the offline mode. Although I would advise going forward that all game companies making games that have single player, like you can play totally by yourself, just go ahead and give us offline mode.
Yep.
It'll make things easier.
Biggest concern I have with Islands of Insight is there's not give me an offline mode, because if this goes away, I'm boned. Yeah. From chat, Ninja Panda says bomb to the lunar landing after 50 years. Yeah, that was very cool yesterday. And also a bomb for the upcoming Borderlands movie. I think both of those are fair. Terminus Tartarus says, bomb. I was in Nuremberg last week. Love the city. Love the beer. Went to Nuremberg underground beer brewery basement to learn more about beer. There was no beer in there anymore. Still learned a lot about beer. But I went to a restaurant that had a lot of beer. We'll visit again. Should you ever come to Germany, visit Nuremberg, visit the castle, go underground, and get drinking. A-bomb for the server service me and friends are using to play Valheim on. We met like every Friday, and we all could not log in. Tried for an hour or so, gave up, and that was it, basically. So yeah, thanks for wasting our time. I hear the beer is the bomb. Go ahead, Q.
Snores a lot. I was going to pass on Nightingale until they said there are dungeons after you get to the city.
Yeah, I mean, look for some of that more advanced content in the first look. Go ahead, Troy.
Tikal says, A-bomb to anybody that's okay with this kumbaya nonsense about sharing exclusives with other consoles. Consoles need things to make them different other than the shape of the controllers. Sony and Microsoft already moved away from having different hardware, but that was okay because the games were different. Now that's not even a thing. I don't want to hear that bullshit about some gamers can only afford one console. Well, guess what? Gaming is an expensive hobby. Sometimes you miss out. When you pick a console, you should expect not to play some games, not expect other consoles to give you theirs. As Thancred told Emanilian, stop looking to others to make your choices and you live with the consequences. I don't get that reference, obviously, because can't pronounce the names.
That's a Final Fantasy 14 reference. That's why you don't get that reference.
Okay.
That's why you don't get that reference.
That makes sense.
To Cal and I, we just disagree on this one. In fact, we were talking a little bit about this on yesterday's The Relic Grind, and I'm sure it'll come up tomorrow on Gaming Gumbo because we're going to go more in depth with the Xbox showcase and stuff on Gaming Gumbo than we did in the Relic Grind. Yeah, I don't ascribe to that. Like I know there are some certain people that like the idea of a console war and like, hey, I'm a PlayStation person, I'm an Xbox person, I only buy one, and so I know I'm never going to play Halo or I'm never going to play this because I bought the other one. I'm just generally not a fan of it these days. And honestly, from a company's perspective, one of the things I said yesterday is I think if you dismiss the fact that the price of consoles impacts this, I think that's a little short-sighted. When consoles are $500 and $600 now, I think there is a discussion to be had about most general consumers are only going to buy one. And so I like, personally, games being available all over the place. I think it makes more financial sense for the companies. The only point of time that I will agree with you, Cal, personally on this one is the console's life or the console's launch cycle. There is a huge benefit to having exclusives in that like 6 to 9 month window when your console launches, right? And I can't debate that. There just absolutely is, because then that directly influences what console you buy. The further you get out from launch, I think exclusives make less and less sense to a company's bottom line. But, it's always an interesting debate. Last up there, Tori the Chicken says, A-bomb to League of Legends for somehow being even more toxic than I remember. I am playing chat off. I got you beat. I'm playing with game off. Question of the week last week. What's the number one and number two, if you're feeling spry, thing that an MMORPG has to have for you to be interested in checking it out? Arctic Panda Pops. What a great name. What I look for in MMOs is interesting worlds and characters. I don't need another boring grassy field. I want somewhere interesting to explore. A mini-map. It sucks how ESO doesn't have a mini-map. Oh yeah, get that add-on. Just do it. Interesting and varied activities to do, not just hitting baddies with a sword. Give me some races, a card game, etc. I'm on board with all three of those. Go ahead, Troy.
Flintstone says, for me to be interested in the new MMORPG, it should be old school level progressive with unlimited level cap. Have mounts, crafting, building, mining, farming, ocean, fishing. Have seasonal environmental changes with depletion and regrowth being random each year, and loads of whatever you can think of things we need to do. Usual NPC to hunt, but more organized and better mass groupings if need be.
Okay, Flintstone, you comment an awful lot, and I love you for it. I want to know what fucking MMO you're playing. Because to my knowledge, I can't think of one that has all of that. So let me know what you're playing, my friend. You know I love you. Go ahead, Q.
Terminus Totaros, things that an MMO needs. Elitism in gear score. I want it to be reduced to a number. In-game item shop. I really had to stop there for a second because I was like, did I read that? In-game item shop that sells the best things the game has to offer, even better if the game is not free to play but with a subscription fee. Gold sellers. Big plus when gold sellers hack your account and leave you with nothing.
Terminus, you know I love you. Yami Kami. Zorgic, the next MMO I get into needs action combat. I'm gonna have to disagree with Troy. Elder Scrolls Online has the best combat of any MMO. You like ESO, but you absolutely detest its combat.
Yeah, I like the world of Elder Scrolls Online. I think they did a great job world building and the way their quests work and the way the dungeons are and the delves and all that. The combat is just floaty and not interesting.
I gotta disagree with you. Although I should say that I play healer primarily. I'm a necro healer in ESO. So my combat is obviously very different when it comes to anything that isn't in the open world, right? Because I'm focused on keeping you. I love the way healer plays. Yeah, I don't know. Like the whole weaving thing was really odd at first. Like way back in the day, like weaving your light attacks in there and stuff like that. And then now they've changed it again and made that a little less important, which pissed a bunch of people off. Like I've always liked their combat interface though. My only gripe with Elder Scrolls Online has always been playing in third person and jumping. When you jump in third person, it looks like there's no gravity. It just jump up. Cameron Bain, isn't my? Oh no, I just read that one. Go ahead, Troy. Cameron Bain.
Cameron Bain. I always liked games with a great skill tree system when leveling.
Ooh,
also good PvE and area design. I want to enjoy my grind as much as possible, LOL. Also, am I the only one who hates dynamic level areas for mobs? Like I enjoyed grinding an area back in the day with tons of other people my level and fighting each other for the mobs. Nowadays, I feel like everyone grinds different areas and it makes the grind less fun.
Huh. Yeah, but then you got to get into like the old school of like tagging things like you were talking about earlier, Q, and I don't know.
I do enjoy me some open tapping. That sure does make my life a lot easier.
Yeah,
not
but then
fighting
you
over
can't.
mobs.
Then you can't grief, which
Then you
let's
can't
be
grief.
honest, is kind of fun sometimes, right? Coming back to that area when you're level capped and you just tagging everything. Go ahead, Q.
Hey, I met one of my best real life friends in World of Warcraft by accidentally griefing him with some mobs he was trying to tame on his hunter, and I was killing the same mobs. And so I thought he was trying to kill him, so I was like trying to help a low level kill some stuff, and then he messaged me. He's like, "Bro, I'm trying to get a pet here." And then I've known him ever since.
Go ahead, Q. Finish it up.
Actually, you'll be finishing it up. These are two.
Oh yeah. My bad.
Get 'em all 69 open world PvP. I just kind of missed the fun I had in Warhammer Online, and the game should practically force you to be social.
Troy is absolutely with you on that one. Takal2399 says an MMO has to have a big time story for it to be worth my time. The Final Fantasy guy expects an MMO to have a big story. Shocking. I know. Question of the week next week. For this question of the week this week. Not giving out future questions. What's an MMO to you, and are they dying? And you can be as specific or as general as we were when we were discussing all of it. Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget your weekly bombs. D-bomb for something good, A-bomb for something bad in the world of gaming, or just life in general. We'll be back next Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern here on twitch.tv/MMOBomb. Until then, Troy, where can everybody find you?
Everything I do is noob fridge.
Q.
On Blue Sky at Miscreation.
I'm Mike Byrne. You can follow me right there at magicman1, but more importantly, follow at MMOBomb so you'll know every time we're going live with a podcast, stream, putting up articles, giveaways, first look videos, and so much more. Until next time, stay safe. We'll see you on the servers.